Next on Max TV, we take a look at Boxing After Dark. We go through the boxing headlines, and we have news and notes. Coming up on the next round. And welcome to a special Club VIP edition of the next round. Steve, Kim, Gabriel Montoya, this show brought to you by Everlast Worldwide. And folks, the reason why we're in here, Tony was wrong. It absolutely rains like hell in Southern California. It looks like Seattle out there, so we've brought the fun indoors. Let's go to round number one, where it's Boxing After Dark from the WAMU Theater at Madison Square Garden. Your doubleheader on HBO, the WBO featherweight title of the world. Stephen Luevano at 37-1-1 takes on Juanma Lopez, who brings in a record of 27-0. In featherweight showdown, Yorkis Gamboa takes on the always rugged Rogers Matagua. Gabe, I'll say this right off the bat in general about this show. What I like about it is this is an old-school Boxing After Dark matchup, smaller, talented fighters, and what I believe are very evenly matched fights.
Oh, for a second I thought you were talking about doing the show on the couch. Yeah, no, this is exactly what Boxing After Dark is all about. You know, young talent kind of rising and meeting at crossroads fights, or fighting in fights like the Gamboa-Matagua fight, which is a rite of passage fight, and then moving on to hopefully face each other down the line. As far as the Matagua fight, the Gamboa fight, if you want to go right into that one and break it down, I think that Gamboa, as flawed as he is, as bad as his chin is, he's still got a lot of power, he's still got a lot of speed. And I think that's going to be enough that in the second half of the fight, if Matagua has put some money in the bank and starts to come on late, and Gamboa can't knock him out, he's still going to be able to stink out the joint much better than Lopez did in the last two rounds.
Yeah, I call Matagua blocky. He's the Black Rocky from Philadelphia. Here's what I think. He's going to make life difficult. He's going to be tough. He's going to be rugged. Unfortunately, a little bit seasoned too much, long in the tooth. Speed, quickness, physical ability, pure boxing ability from the outside, better legs. I think Matagua makes it tough, but I like Gamboa to win this fight. Now, the main event I find to be intriguing. Both fighters are top-ranked fighters, but it is telling they're basically putting this fight in the hometown of Juanma Lopez, despite the fact Luevano is the WBO champion. And like you mentioned, there is talk of a showdown between Gamboa and Juanma Lopez. As Dennis Green would say, it seems like they have already crowned Juanma Lopez.
Yeah, Luevano this is his 8th defense of the title. He's kind of been an under-the-radar champion. If you go to a lot of the top-ranked cards or you buy the pay-per-views, he's usually a co-feature or he's right underneath there. And he's a solid fighter. He's a great counterpuncher. He knows how to use that southpaw style, moves around the ring well. He's got really sneaky power, but he's not very flashy. There's nothing about him that you can really sell. And you get the sense that they've put him in with one of their big stars, Juanma, who doesn't have 8 title defenses, is not as accomplished, but it kind of brings that charisma and that it factor. It almost feels like he's kind of a sacrificial lamb here.
No, I think that's a great term. Listen, he's solid, he's steady, he's a counterpuncher, and they believe he's not spectacular, but they believe Juanma Lopez can be special. And as you jettison Miguel Cotto as owning the island of Puerto Rico, they really believe they're going to transition from the next stage of Miguel Cotto to Juanma Lopez. Here's the thing. Stephen Luevano, he may not be an especially fun fighter to watch. He's not action-packed, but he's very calculating. He's very sound fundamentally, good sense of timing. Just don't know if he's going to be active. Now, they can say all they want about this. Home canvas advantage goes to Juanma Lopez. I know Lopez struggled down the stretch against the rugged Matagua. May have been an issue of weight and style. I don't think either issue persists in this fight. I like Juanma Lopez to win a decision for one reason, Gabe. I think he's going to be a little bit more active.
No, yeah, I talked to Juanma this week, and he said the weight, he feels much better at it. He feels very strong right now. That he had a very solid training camp. Of course, Oscar says that every fight. But in this fight, I think that Luevano, he's got a lot of dog in him. That's the thing. He will wait around for you. He's a natural counterpuncher. But if you attack him, he will go right back at you. And with Juanma's style of being very aggressive and throwing a lot of punches, I think this could be a lot better fight than people realize. But I like Juanma down the stretch, and I like him by stopping.
I like this young kid out of La Puente for one reason. He's gotten off the canvas, dusted off his pants, and gotten up to fight like hell. Stephen Luevano, in talking to him this past week, he says, you know what? I'm going to do what I do in the first half of the fight, and I'm going to come on and step on the gas pedal the last 6-7 rounds. He said it point blank. I don't think this guy is a long-distance runner. In that last fight, Wanma certainly did not look like a Kenyan marathoner, but you look at skills, you look at overall class and technique, you just get the sense he's just a little bit better than Stephen Luevina. Well, that's it for round number 1. We come back, we take a look at some headlines on the next round. And welcome back to Club Max Boxing. Yes, a special indoor edition of the next round. Steve, Kim, Gabriel Montoya. This show brought to you by Everlast Worldwide. We go on to round number 2. We take a look at some big headlines from the past week. It is made. Yes, you can't stop it. Just try. Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones do it once again, April 17th at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. And big news coming out of last week, Jermaine Taylor, Mr. Bad Intentions, he has dropped out of the Super 6, taking a leave of boxing, from the game of boxing. Here's what I think, Gabe. One thing is very good news, where I think it's the prudent decision from Jermaine Taylor. The other news, Hopkins-Jones, I have to tell you, before Roy Jones got starched or stretched by Danny Green in February, you could somewhat almost justify this and still say to yourself, you could see why it's made, there's still a viability to it, there's a personal story. Now it's made in the aftermath of a guy getting knocked out in about 2 minutes. Let's make this very, very clear. This is about Bernard Hopkins overriding everybody else, and I'll say this, it's an insult to everyone's intelligence.
Absolutely. It's a total money grab. You know, and it just makes the sport look terrible. You got a guy that just got knocked out. And remember the last time, the first time Roy Jones got knocked out, came back a little soon, came back 9 months later, he got knocked out again. I think Bernard Hopkins, by a guy who Bernard Hopkins knocked out. I think Bernard Hopkins' technique is aged much better than Jones. And, a couple months ago, this was a seniors tour fight, much like Trinidad versus Jones. It didn't really affect the division. It was two guys with a grudge who want to make one last big payday. And if, they had called it that and marketed it that, it would be fine. But this being somehow a meaningful fight that we're going to have to pay pay-per-view money for, it is insulting. It's absolutely insulting.
Here's what I wrote in my article. If it's so personal and these guys have a score to settle, do what Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed did at the end of Rocky III. Go into a deserted gym, don't invite anybody, and just go a few rounds with headgear and big gloves. Here's what I think. The bottom line is Roy Jones should be carefully looked at by the Nevada State Athletic Commission. This isn't about one knockout. This is about a continuum of events since 2004. Shame on HBO if they decide to even distribute this. Shame on Golden Boy for foisting this on the public. Shame on Bernard Hopkins for almost exploiting this situation. And shame on the Nevada State Athletic Commission if they don't do their due diligence. I find it ironic. Oscar De La Hoya, in his award-winning blog, said a couple of months ago that Roy Jones should retire, and yet now you're going to promote this guy? That is hypocrisy.
That is absolute hypocrisy. But, considering that Jermaine Taylor, who I think rightfully should have retired, he'd been knocked out in 2 or 3 of his last 4 fights, but he's left a back door. He may come back. So maybe the winner of Hopkins-Jones can get Jermaine Taylor.
Okay, let's stop that right there. Here's the thing about Jermaine Taylor what I found interesting. First of all, I agree with the move, but in reading that press release, he thanked Al Heyman, he thanked everybody, the guy that cuts his lawn, the guy that cuts his hair, the guys at the barber shop, the guys at the radio station that used to make fun of him. He thanked everyone but Lou DiBella, which I found interesting that Lou DiBella had been with them throughout his whole career. Lou DiBella made the eye-opening decision to say, I'm going to walk away because I don't believe you should fight. And I think it shows you once again that promoters are in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation when you walk away from fighters. It's obvious, reading that press release and the omission of Mr. DiBella, there's obviously some harsh feelings about doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think Lou's going to have to eat it on this one. I totally agreed with his decision. But, he forced Jermaine Taylor, kind of out into the light and forced him into a position where he kind of had to step down. That moving forward, everybody was kind of looking at him like the train wreck in the room nobody wanted to talk to. And so now he's retired, and I think eventually that relationship will be repaired. I mean, Lou took him from, amateurs all the way to the title, took him to the heights of the sport, and did his job that when it was time to hang him up, he walked away.
And February 5th, Alan Green takes on Saki Obika. The word is that is basically the de facto elimination bout to face Andre Ward on April 17th for inclusion into Showtime's World Boxing Classic. We come back, we wrap it up with news and notes. And wrapping it up here with news and notes on the next round, we move on to the fight review. Saturday night, it was Top Rank Live in Las Vegas. It Vanes Martirosyan with a controversial 10-round decision over Kasim Uma. And the night before that in Laredo, Texas, Friday night fights, Juan Carlos Burgos with a TKO in 12 over Juan Carlos Martinez. I'm going to be very honest. Vanes Martirosyan's a kid that I like. We both know him from the Wild Card Gym. I'll be very honest. I don't think he won that fight. He was back on his roller skates, backing up the whole night. Really reverted back to some amateur habits. I have to be honest about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I had it 6-4 for Uma. It was a very clear win, in my opinion. He took control from the outset. He found a home for his right hook right over the top of Vanes' lazy jab, and Vanes adjusted to it a few times, but it kept coming back. And then eventually he would raise up his right hand to guard against it, and the left hand from Uma would be wide open. You know, I did think there was a lot of headbutts in the fight, but that's nothing new when a southpaw and an orthodox fighter fight. But I thought Vanes let him get into his head, particularly in the 4th round.
Yeah, Vanes' nickname for this fight should be Peter Cottontail because he was bouncing up, hopping up and down the ring.
Yeah.
Bottom line is pro boxing about sitting in the pocket, planting your feet. He's got heavy and fast hands, but when you are so skittish in the ring and you don't plant your feet and have a good foundation, that takes away from your own power. It really does, and that's the thing. There's a lot of talk, and I read a lot of talk from our websites and others about Vanes Martirosyan is knocking on the door of a title shot. Completely disagree. I think Top Rank has to slow this down. He's not on the doorstep. He may have pulled up down the block to the driveway. He's not on the doorstep.
See, coming into the fight, I thought he was starting to look good. He was settling down the punches. But then, Uma is a huge step up in class. Now, if he had shown up the way I thought most of us thought he would, kind of out of shape and had kind of lost that fire, then it would have been one of those, you get a name on your resume and move on to the title shot. It would have done Vanes no service whatsoever. But Uma showed up in great shape. He came in at 150 pounds, clearly thought this was his last hurrah and wanted to win the fight. And now we find out where Vanes really is at. There was a lot of talk from Freddie that Vanes was sitting down on his punches more, trying to get more leverage, get more power, and fight more like a pro. But it really goes to show that as soon as he started getting hit with right hands and getting rocked as early as the 1st round, he reverted back to his old habits. I think they should get him into a couple more rebuilding fights and move slower towards the title.
And let's give the Dream some credit. He did look rejuvenated. That's the best I've seen him in about 3 or 4 years. He's still a serviceable guy. I think there are a few paydays out there for him. But in terms of Vanes Martirosyan, let's look at some of the very good young blue-chip 54-pounders. Gabe, do you put him in the same class as Alfred Angulo and James Kirkland? I think the answer is niet.
Absolutely not. James Kirkland, granted if he's in shape after he gets out of jail, would probably roll through him in about 4 rounds. I think Angulo maybe would take 6 because he's a little slower, maybe 8. But I think both guys have a great chance to stop him, and they're just in another class right now. Forget about Sergey Zinzirek or Paul Williams.
No. Looking back to Friday night fights, Juan Carlos Burgos. Now I know people are going to blanch at this, but taking away the situation with the hand wraps, Juan Carlos Burgos' style and temperament reminds me of Antonio Margarito. Hard-nosed grinder, not the greatest technique, but a very good body puncher who's going to bring the fight for all 36 minutes.
Yeah, but at the same token, I thought that his opponent, Martinez, did very well throughout the fight. I thought Teddy was just staring at Burgos. I thought both announcers were, and calling everything he was doing. And for me, maybe Burgos is a slow starter, but Martinez was winning the first half of that fight, in my opinion. He was bringing the action, he was dictating the pace, and he was throwing a lot more punches. And granted, not all of them were landing, but he was landing flush shots. But I like Burgos' chances to do something further down the line.
And Demetrius Andrade, a boo-boo, a talented young guy, by far the most highly decorated 2008 U.S. Olympian. Gabe, I think this guy is the goods. However, what took place Friday night, and this is what I love about Teddy Atlas, love him or loathe him, he's going to say what's on his mind, and he called it correctly. In my story, he said, this guy he's facing is an abomination, and this may not last 1 or 2 rounds. 78 seconds into that fight, Teddy was made to be Nostradamus.
Yeah, you didn't need to read an email to know that this was a mismatch. I mean, the guy looked like...
or be told about one by a source.
Yeah, the guy looked like he just got off this couch and walked in the ring. I mean, it was a complete mismatch. We know nothing about Andrade from this fight. But, looking back at all his past fights, looking at the way he handled this guy, because sometimes, you can let a guy like that extend you and show a lack of class. Andrade looks like he is the goods. The only thing I don't like about him that I'm going to be tired of in about 10 years after covering him is having to call him boo-boo. I just can't do it.
Wow, not a fan of Yogi Bear. Here's the thing about Demetrius Andrade. I think he's very, very good, but he did the Chris Rock. He did what he was supposed to. Now, if you want to move him up a certain level, there is a middle ground. No one's saying he has to face Paul Williams and Sergio Martinez right now, but I still think he needs to get some quality rounds under his belt, because when you pay a kid that much, the way Star Boxing and Artie Pelullo did, this is not a long-term developmental plan. I think they want to move faster rather than slower, but we'll see where that goes. Moving on to the fight preview. This Saturday night in the Philippines for the IBF Junior Flyweight title, the Pinoy Punch, Brian Viloria, makes the second defense of this title against Carlos Tamara. I'll say this right now, and knowing Brian as well as I do, I think this second title run, I think, will be much longer and much more productive than the first one. I think the first time around, he was ready to win a title, wasn't necessarily ready to defend it. After some time at the Alameda swap meet and really being humbled, I think Brian Viloria is going to have a pretty good run here, although Tamara looks like a pretty tough out.
Yeah, it definitely is going to be a tough out. But, yeah, like you said, Viloria, it appreciates what he has now. Before, I think everything, he was on a fast track. He was promoted, very well, but a little quick. And he got that title, and I think it went right to his head, and then he lost it immediately. And he never quite figured out how to get it back. And when they took him off TV, like you said, they took him to the swap meet, they had him in really small venues, and just let him be a fighter. Let him rebuild as a fighter, and you can really see the difference in him now.
Yeah, and Robert Garcia, one of the bright young trainers out of Oxnard, former world champion, has done an outstanding job of giving him a ring identity. They didn't call him the Hawaiian boxer. He's a Hawaiian punch. He's a hard-nosed guy that can bring heat with both hands. He has an identity, and he starts to have his aggression back. I think he's going to have to work to beat tomorrow, though. Looking at this record, all 4 losses to quality guys and world champions, never been stopped. And those Colombians can bang. So this is a tough fight. Yeah. I think he gets through it, and perhaps a showdown with Ivan Calderon. Taking a look as we wrap it up, a couple of tidbits here. Amir Khan has signed with Golden Boy, and then this is not listed, but Floyd Mayweather March 13th. We're not sure what he's going to do. The reports are now that perhaps May 1st he takes on the winner of Mosley Berto. Amir Khan has signed with Golden Boy. Frank Warren must write up the worst contracts from a promoter's perspective in the world. Let's take a look. Nassim Ahmed builds him, loses him. Ricky Hatton builds him, loses him. Joe Calzaghe builds him, loses him. Amir Khan builds him and lost him. I think, you know what type of letter is great with Frank Warren? A Dear John. Because it is amazing to me that this guy does a great job of promoting, developing, cultivating ticket sellers to lose them every single time out.
Yeah, you get the sense he wrote his contract in disappearing invisible ink or something.
Or Crayola.
Yeah, I mean, geez, it's kind of sad, but it shows the way the business of boxing is, that there's no such thing as loyalty. There's no such thing, it's a business. And, Amir Khan wants to be a star in the United States. He really wants to be a global star. He's already got a following over there, but for him to be successful and to make the kind of money he wants to, he's going to come to the United States.
Does he?
Well, I don't think about that. I said he's going to.
He's
I didn't say he has to.
He's not Nassim Ahmed. He doesn't bring that type of excitement and showmanship. He's already a big star in Britain, and I'm not so sure based on world events. I don't want to get political. He is of Pakistani descent. How popular can that guy be in America? He's never had a track record here of being a star. He's never had a fight here. Richard Schaefer has called this a quote-unquote strategic alliance. Does that mean after he retires that Amir Khan will be the head of Golden Boy Pakistan? I don't understand where the deal is, but I want to know why he left Frank Warren. Was he getting fleeced? Was he getting ripped off? Was he unhappy? But on the surface, in terms of what a promoter is supposed to do, develop and cultivate a fighter. Yeah, they had that trip up with Bradus Prescott, but he still became a world champion, and he is still a legitimate ticket seller. And I don't understand why bring him to America when he's so successful in England, and I don't think he has quite the following yet of a Ricky Hatton. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, I think the key words in this sentence are Golden Boy. Any prospect that asks me, you want to be developed, if you want to be a star, if you don't really know what it takes to be that and don't really know what that means, you're going to sign with Golden Boy because they're a big name, they've got the HBO contract. But if you want to be developed, and you're in Europe, you be with Frank Warren. If you want to be developed in the United States, you be with Top Rank. I think that the matchmaking, maybe the Brady Prescott thing bothered Khan. I'm not sure, but he seems he's training here in Los Angeles. He seems to enjoy it here, and maybe he just wants to be here. I'm not quite sure.
And as for Floyd Mayweather, I get the sense he is not going to fight March 13th. As we tape this show, it is less than 60 days out from that date. Well, Top Rank and Manny Pacquiao, they're going to go on a media tour, a little small one this week. No opponent, no nothing, no word from Leonard Ellerby or Al Heyman regarding Floyd Mayweather. Now there are some reports from Lem Satterfield, the Fan House, that perhaps Mayweather fights on May 1st against the winner of Mosley-Berto. I have to say this. That is a very, very nice option. Certainly better than the names we heard from March 13th.
Yeah, and well, considering he hadn't talked to any of those names, you know, the Paulie Malignaggi, Nate Campbell, Kermit Cintron. I spoke to, you know, if not all those fighters, all their representatives, and they, as of Saturday, had not been contacted by the Mayweather camp. So it makes sense. I think the dueling pay-per-view idea was
disaster.
Maybe, yeah,
disaster.
It's maybe a way to drive a wedge between Top Rank and HBO, where it forced HBO to kind of pick between the two camps and maybe just, you know, step back and not pick anybody, forcing Bob Arum to pay for his own pay-per-view. But I think ultimately, you know, it's going to be on May 1st, and I think Mayweather-Mosley is the fight I always wanted to see in the first place. I think it's a great fight.
I'm going to drop a poker reference about what Golden Boy did, and I hope I got the name right. Gary, let me know if I'm wrong. You didn't have to be Phil Ivey to know that Golden Boy was bluffing. It is Phil Ivey, though, right? Yeah, who the hell was going to pay to see that pay-per-view if it was Mayweather against anybody not named Paul Williams or Shane Mosley or perhaps even an Andre Berto? And I think March 13th, if you had the dueling dates, if that came to fruition, that would have been like the Titanic going one way and the Poseidon heading the other. That is mutually assured disaster.
Yeah.
Listen, do I think it's the best thing that they're not fighting? No, but if you get Mosley against Mayweather May 1st, Claude and Pacquiao, and you have a de facto Final Four, maybe they meet down the line. When it's all said and done, you know what? People are willing to forgive and forget. They'll forget about everything that's happened the last month and a half. And if it comes down to that fight being later this year, guess what, folks? They're not going to lose a single buy, in my opinion.
But here's the thing that people are forgetting is that Shane Mosley's got a very tough fight in
Yes,
Andre
he does.
Berto.
Against, I think, an inspired guy.
I think so, too. I absolutely think so. You know, before I thought Shane walks right through him, or not right through him, but, you know, takes him in deep water and drowns him. But, you know, with everything that's going on with Haiti, you can see a bit of a change in Andre Berto. He's inspired. And that's a very dangerous man that Shane's going to be fighting, a much younger guy, a faster guy, and a well-schooled guy that can hit hard. So I think it's very disrespectful of Golden Boy to be speculating, or Mayweather and them to be speculating about Berto or about Mayweather versus Shane as if Berto's just an afterthought. I mean, they are managed by the same guy. I mean, maybe Floyd knows something we don't. But I think they need to just kind of hold off and wait a second before they start talking about the fight.
Yeah, so there you have it for this week's edition of TNR. On behalf of Gabriel Montoya and the rest of Max Boxing, till the next round, goodbye, everybody.